The capture. The prison cell was cold. Very cold. The walls were made of black stone, hard and silent. There were no windows, no lights, only a soft red glow coming from the floor. A strange chain wrapped around the human's body, glowing slightly with green symbols. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall. His face was calm, his eyes closed. He was not afraid. Even after 5 days in the dark, without food, without warmth, the man did not scream. He did not cry. He just waited. Outside his cell, 2 alien guards stood tall. They were Zarians, strong, gray-skinned warriors with yellow eyes and sharp armor. They were afraid of the human, but they didn't show it. One guard whispered, "Why hasn't he broken yet?" The other said, "He's human. They don't break like we expect." Footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy, important. A new figure entered, tall, powerful, and wrapped in a dark purple cloak. It was Commander Valera, one of the youngest and most loyal officers of the Zarian Empire. Her face was calm, cold. Her silver hair was tied tight behind her head. "This is the one?" she asked. "Yes, Commander," the guard replied. "Captured near the rebel zone. We chained him with Class X energy locks, but he hasn't spoken a single word." Valera looked through the force field. The man didn't move. He didn't even open his eyes. She narrowed her eyes. "Bring me his file." The guard handed her a small device. She read through it quickly. There was no name, just a code. Subject H097. No rank, no ID, no weapon on capture, she read. And yet, took down 6 soldiers before surrendering. And didn't run. He let himself be taken. She stepped closer to the field. "I want to speak to him." "Commander, that is not safe," the guard warned. "He may be using some kind of mental trick." I said, "Open it." The force field dropped. Valera walked into the cell. The human didn't move. His hands were still chained. His clothes were dirty, torn, but his posture was straight. Finally, he opened his eyes. They were bright blue. He looked at her, not with fear, but with curiosity. Valera felt something strange. Just for a second, her chest tightened. Her thoughts paused. Then she pushed it away. "I am Commander Valera," she said. "You are a prisoner of the Zarian Empire. You will speak. You will tell us what you know." The man blinked slowly. "I know you're not happy," he said. Valera froze. "What did you say?" "You wear the uniform. You speak the words. But your eyes, they're tired. Lonely." Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to ask questions. You're the prisoner." He smiled slightly. "I'm not asking. I'm just noticing." Valera turned away. She didn't like this. He was supposed to be afraid, broken, silent. But he wasn't. Outside the cell, an alarm rang. Just once. Lights flickered for a second. Power glitch. But only his cell glowed brighter for a moment. The chains pulsed softly. The walls hummed like they knew something was coming. Valera stepped out, the force field reactivating behind her. "Keep a close watch on him," she ordered. "No one enters without my command." She walked away quickly, trying to ignore the sound of her own heart beating faster than before. Back inside, the human leaned his head back against the wall. "I won't be here long," he whispered to himself. "She'll come back." And that's when it begins. The questioning begins. The next day, the metal doors of the prison opened again. Commander Valera returned. This time, she was alone. No guards, no weapons, just a single glowing tablet in her hand and a storm of questions in her mind. She stood outside the force field of cell 9, looking at the human again. He was awake, sitting just like yesterday, calm, quiet, watching her. "Still alive," she said, stepping closer. He nodded, still waiting. Valera tilted her head. "Waiting for what?" "For you to stop pretending," he said gently. You act like you hate me, but you're curious. That's why you're here again. Valera didn't answer. Instead, she lowered the tablet and touched the screen. The force field hissed and disappeared. She walked in slowly and sat on the small bench across from him. I'm not here to be your friend, she said firmly. He smiled. I didn't think you were. Valera stared at him. She had interrogated spies, rebels, and assassins before, but something about this man felt different. He didn't look dangerous. But he felt dangerous. He hadn't moved once to attack her. He hadn't begged for water. He hadn't even asked her name. But he saw right through her. You were captured near Sector K, correct? She asked, holding up the tablet. I didn't hide, he replied. Your people found me easily. Why didn't you run? He leaned back, eyes looking at the glowing ceiling. Because I needed to meet someone. Valera frowned. Who? He looked right at her. You. Her eyes narrowed. Don't play games. I'm not, he said quietly. There's something inside you. You felt it too, haven't you? The dream. The pull. The question that won't leave. Valera stood up. She turned her back to him for a moment. Her breath caught in her throat. How did he know? Last night, she had a strange dream. She saw herself breaking her armor, standing under a strange sky, holding the hand of someone whose face was blurry. But his voice was clear. It was his voice. She turned back sharply. You're trying to confuse me. No, he said. I'm trying to help you remember. Valera shook her head. Enough. Tell me your name. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Kale. She wrote it down. Kale. What? Just Kale. And what were you doing in Sector K? I was sent, he said simply. By the Human Alliance. He shook his head. No, not by humans. By something. Older. Valera blinked. Are you saying you're part of some cult? Kale chuckled softly. Call it what you want. But I've seen your world. Your empire. You conquer planets, but you've lost your hearts. You forgot how to feel. We are strong, Valera said sharply. You are empty, Kale replied softly. And that's worse. His words hit her like a knife. Valera turned again, pacing the small cell. You don't understand us. I understand you, Valera, he said gently. You hide behind your rank, but you're tired. You don't want to fight anymore. Her hands clenched. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to remind him that she was in control. But she didn't. Instead, she sat down again. You have no idea who I am, she said coldly. I do, Kale said. You're the one who's supposed to change everything. She stared at him. What do you mean? Kale looked at the glowing chains on his arms. They don't just hold me, he said. They test people. The ones who can see beyond fear. They hear them speak. Valera looked down at the chains. They were silent, just glowing faintly. What are they? She asked. They were once used to bind gods, Kale whispered. Now, they look for those who can set gods free. Valera laughed once, dryly. You're insane. Maybe, he smiled. Or maybe I just know something you've forgotten. Silence filled the cell. A strange peace. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Valera stood up and stepped closer to him. She looked into his blue eyes. Searching. Doubting. Curious. Why do you talk like this? Like you know me. Kale didn't break eye contact. Because I dreamed of you before I met you. In that dream, you weren't wearing armor. You were crying. And I was holding your hand. Valera backed away. Her heart beat louder than before. She touched her chest without thinking. She was trained never to show weakness. But this man, this prisoner, was breaking something inside her without lifting a finger. You talk too much, she said, forcing her voice to stay cold. Kale nodded. Maybe. But you'll come back. Because deep down, You want to know why? Valera turned and left the cell without another word. Outside, the guards looked at her nervously, but she just kept walking. This time, she didn't feel like a commander. This time, she felt like someone lost. Back in the cell, Cale looked at the chains again. They were glowing brighter. She's starting to remember, he whispered. Good. Secrets behind chains. The hallway was quiet. Commander Valera walked fast, her boots echoing on the cold metal floor. Her face showed no emotion, but inside her mind, everything was shaking. She didn't understand it. Why did his voice stay in her head? Why did she dream of him even before they met? And what did he mean when he said the chains test people? She had to find out more. Valera entered the restricted archive room. Only officers of her level were allowed inside. The lights turned on automatically as she stepped forward. A blue screen floated in front of her, waiting for a command. She typed in, Subject H097, Human Prisoner, Chain History, Classified Records. A warning popped up. Access denied. High risk file. Restricted to Empress or above. Valera's eyes narrowed. She entered her override code. Another warning. Viewing this file without approval may result in termination. She didn't care. She tapped again. The screen flickered and opened. There it was, a full report about Cale, the human prisoner. But something strange stood out right away. Most of the file was blacked out. Name, Cale. Origin, unknown. Birthplace, redacted. Skills, redacted. Special traits, redacted. Threat level, extreme. Do not remove chains. Her heart skipped. She scrolled further down. There were reports from military scientists, photos of the chains glowing, audio clips with static and strange whispers, test logs showing what happened when others tried to remove them. One note chilled her. Commander Betrayal attempted to unchain Subject H097. Within 30 seconds, Commander lost control of motor functions and wept uncontrollably. He said, He showed me my own soul. Subject did not move during the event. Valera's hands trembled. This was not just a prisoner. This man, Cal, was something the Empire didn't understand or feared. She turned off the screen and left the room without saying a word. That night, Valera returned to the prison. The guards looked surprised to see her again so soon. I'll question him again, she said. Alone. Yes, Commander. She stepped into the hallway. This time, she noticed something. The closer she got to his cell, the warmer it felt. The lights flickered softly, and there was a deep hum in the air, like something alive was breathing behind the walls. She entered his cell. Cale looked up. He smiled. You found the file. Valera didn't answer. She stood still, staring at the glowing green chains. Why do they fear them? She asked. Cale tilted his head. Because they think these chains are weapons. Aren't they? She asked. No, he said. They're mirrors. Valera frowned. What does that mean? Cale looked down at the metal around his arms and chest. The chains pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. They show the truth, he said softly. Not just about me, but about anyone who touches them. Your empire tried to break me, but they didn't understand. The chains don't belong to them. They belong to something older, something wiser. Valera stepped closer. Her eyes locked on the symbols, each one moving like ink underwater. What happens if I touch them? Cale didn't answer right away. Then he said, only if your heart is ready. Valera hesitated. Her hand hovered over his wrist. Why do I feel like I know you? She whispered. Because your soul does, Cale replied. Her fingers brushed the chain. Nothing happened. At first. Then the air shifted. The symbols on the chains glowed brighter. Valera gasped and took a step back. She saw flashes. Memories. But not hers. A child crying in the rain. A broken sword buried in a garden. Stars falling. A voice saying, "You'll meet her when the war begins again." Valera blinked. Her breathing was fast. What? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Cale said gently. "The chains let you see." Valera backed away, confused and angry. "I'm not weak," she said. "I don't believe in magic or fate." Cale nodded. "That's what they told you. But deep down, you know they're wrong." Valera stared at him. "Why me?" Cale's voice dropped lower. "Because you're the one who can break the system, from the inside." She stepped outside the cell. The force field activated again. Valera stood there, heart pounding. "You've changed nothing," she said. Cale smiled. "Then why are your hands still shaking?" Valera looked down. She hadn't even noticed. Her fingers were trembling. Later that night, Valera returned to her private quarters. She closed the door, locked it, and stood in front of her mirror. She took off her uniform jacket slowly. That's when she saw it. A faint green mark glowing on her collarbone, just like the symbols on Cal's chains. It was small, shaped like a flame. Her eyes widened. She tried to wipe it away, but it didn't fade. It pulsed with her heartbeat. "What are you?" she whispered. Back in the prison, Cale looked up at the ceiling. The chains on his body were humming. "She's starting to see," he said. He closed his eyes. The chains chose her, just like they chose me. The bond they never expected. Valera didn't sleep that night. She sat in her quarters, staring at the glowing mark on her skin. It looked like fire, but it didn't burn. It pulsed slowly, softly, like it was alive. She ran her fingers across it again. Still there. Still glowing. "What have you done to me, Cal?" she whispered. But deep down, a small voice replied, "He didn't do this. You did." The next morning, Valera stepped into the prison again. This time, she didn't walk with confidence. She moved slower, quieter. The guards noticed. "Commander," one asked. "I'll speak to the prisoner again." Alone. They didn't question her anymore. She entered Cal's cell. He was sitting the same way as before, calm, centered, as if he had all the time in the galaxy. "You look tired," he said softly. Valera didn't answer. She sat across from him, eyes locked on the chains. "They're not normal tech, are they?" she asked. Cale shook his head. "No. They come from before the Empire, before the stars were even mapped." Valera narrowed her eyes. "Then how did you get them?" Cale gave a small smile. "I didn't find them. They found me." Valera let out a sharp breath. "You keep talking in riddles." "No," he said. "You're just not ready to understand the answers yet." She leaned forward. "Then help me understand. Tell me why I see things when I touch you. Tell me why this." She pointed at the glowing mark on her skin. "Won't go away." Cal's face softened. "Because a bond has started," he said gently. Valera frowned. "A bond?" Cale nodded. "Between souls. It's rare. It's not about love. It's not about control. It's about truth. Purpose. You were meant to find me." She scoffed. "You're just a prisoner." "I was doing my job." "No," Cale said calmly. "You were searching for something. Maybe you didn't know it. Maybe you were hiding it even from yourself. But the moment we met, the chains responded, because they know when two souls are about to change the galaxy." Valera looked away. His words were too much, too deep, too true. And yet, she didn't stop him. She didn't leave. "Why me?" she asked again, her voice quieter now. Cale leaned forward. "Because you're the only one who still listens to her heart." Valera's hands clenched in her lap. She had spent her whole life following orders, training, obeying, becoming stronger. But not once had anyone cared about her heart. Cale did. That made her angry and afraid. Later that day, Valera returned to headquarters. She was supposed to report her progress with the prisoner. Instead, she locked herself in a private research room and accessed the ancient archive, a secret library of the old universe, hidden from most of the Empire. She typed, "Soul resonance, flame mark, human chain bonds." The screen loaded slowly. Then something appeared, a forbidden scroll, a legend, written in the first tongue. In the age before the Empire, when gods walked among stars, they made the flame chains, not to trap, but to test. Whoever could carry them without falling into madness was the one meant to carry balance between species. Two souls, one human, one other. They would be drawn by the chain's call. Valera's heart pounded. It was real. All of it. That night, she returned to Kale again. This time, she didn't wear her uniform. She came in simple black clothes, hair down, eyes clear. Kale looked at her. "You've been reading," he said. She nodded. "You knew this would happen." "I hoped," he replied. Valera sat close. Very close. Their knees almost touched. "I don't understand everything," she whispered, "but I feel something when I'm near you. I feel calm, and angry, and safe, and confused." Kale smiled. "That's what the bond does." Valera shook her head slowly. "But I'm still Zarian. You're human. Our kinds are enemies." "No," Kale said. "Our leaders are enemies. But we're just people. Lost. Hurt. Trying to be something better." Valera looked into his eyes. She saw warmth, not weakness. Strength, but soft. And suddenly, she didn't feel like a commander anymore. She felt like a woman who had just taken her first breath. She leaned forward and placed her hand gently on his. The chains shimmered. A soft light glowed around both of them. Valera's breath caught. "I see something," she whispered. "What do you see?" Kale asked. "A world without war," she said. "A city with green skies. Children laughing. And you, standing beside me." Kale closed his eyes. "That's the future we can build." Outside the cell, a soldier watched from the shadows. He held a recording device. His eyes widened as he saw the chains react to Valera's touch. He turned quickly and ran down the hallway. Straight to the Empress. Back in the cell, Kale looked at Valera. "The moment is close," he said. Valera frowned. "What moment?" Kale looked up. "They'll try to separate us. Soon, you'll have to choose, not just between me and the Empire, but between who you were and who you're becoming." Valera felt her heart grow heavy. "Will I be ready?" Kale's eyes glowed faintly. "You already are." The Empress's test. The throne room was colder than the prison. It stood high above the Zarian capital, a dome of black stone and violet glass. Sharp pillars lined the walls. The sky above was dark purple, and lightning rolled quietly in the clouds. The room was quiet, dangerously quiet. Valera stood in the center, alone. Her boots clicked softly as she stepped forward. The Empress sat on a high seat, unmoving. Tall, terrifying, and elegant, Empress Syraxis was wrapped in robes that shimmered like space itself. Her silver crown glowed with tiny stars. Her face held no smile, only deep power. And her voice, soft, but sharp like a blade. "You have touched the prisoner." Valera froze. The words came without welcome, without question. She slowly lowered her eyes. "Yes, Empress. You have allowed him to speak to you freely. More than once. You have entered his cell without guards. Yes. You have shown signs of resonance. We have seen the mark." Valera looked up now, fear in her chest. "Then you know what that means." The Empress stood. It felt like the room itself bent under her presence. "I know what it could mean. I also know what it has meant in the past. Disaster. Rebellion. Fall of empires. The flame chains have returned before. And every time, they chose the one who brought destruction to the throne." Valera swallowed. That destruction could be transformation. The Empress's eyes narrowed. That is not your choice. A long silence followed. Then the Empress walked down the steps toward her. Slow, heavy, final. She stopped just one step above Valera and looked down at her face. You have always been loyal, she said. One of my brightest minds. I raised you from an orphan girl into a leader, a daughter of the Empire. And now you kneel at the feet of a human prisoner. I don't kneel, Valera replied softly. Not to him, not to you. I kneel only to the truth. The Empress's face hardened. Then let us see your truth. She lifted one hand. Guards entered from both sides. And behind them, Kale. His hands were still chained, but his eyes, calm, bright, knowing, looked straight at Valera. Valera's breath caught. What are you doing? She asked. The Empress didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the middle of the room where a circle of glowing runes appeared. Place him there. Kale was pulled into the center. The moment his feet touched the circle, the chains around his arms glowed violently, like fire trapped in metal. He winced but didn't fall. Valera stepped forward. Stop. You don't know what. I know exactly what I'm doing, the Empress said. This is the test of loyalty. You will choose. Valera looked around. Dozens of soldiers stood with weapons drawn. She was outnumbered, outpowered, and trapped in the most dangerous room in the galaxy. Choose what? She asked, voice shaking. The Empress raised both hands. A second glowing circle formed beside Kale. Empty. Cold. Waiting. You will step into the circle, the Empress said, and place your hand on the chains. If the bond is real, the chains will release him. If it is not, your soul will burn. Valera stared. The whole room seemed to blur. If she stepped in, she could die. But if she didn't, Kale would never be free. Her hands trembled. The Empress stepped back. Choose, Valera. Loyalty or death. Kale looked at her then, and even in chains, in pain, in the center of danger, he smiled. You don't have to be afraid, he said. She shook her head. I'm not afraid of dying. Then what? Valera whispered, I'm afraid. I'll never be free. Kale's voice softened. Then come to me. The room held its breath. Valera stepped into the circle. One foot, then the other. The rooms glowed brighter. Her skin burned, but she kept walking. Every step felt like walking through fire. And then she reached him. She looked into Kale's eyes. I'm not sure what I am anymore, she whispered. Kale smiled gently. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. She placed her hand on the chain. The Empress stepped forward. And then, everything exploded with light. Valera screamed, not in pain, but from the sheer power that hit her heart like thunder. She saw memories, her childhood, her loneliness, her anger, her fear, her longing to be more. And then she saw Kale. In every vision of hope, in every moment where she could have chosen silence, but chose courage instead. The chains burst apart like fire breaking its own cage. Kale fell forward, free. Valera dropped to her knees. The mark on her skin blazed like a star. Gasps filled the throne room. The Empress stepped back. No, she hissed. This cannot happen again. Guards raised their weapons. Arrest them both. Kale opened his eyes. No. With a wave of his hand, the broken chains lifted into the air like metal snakes and threw the guards back with a blast of invisible energy. Valera stood, shaking. Kale, we have to go. He nodded. She looked at the Empress one last time. You raised me to be loyal, she said, but you never asked me what I believed in. And with that, Valera and Kale ran. Out of the throne room, down the long winding halls, toward the edge of the Empire, and into the unknown. Escape through fire. The capital was on fire. Sirens howled. Spaceships roared overhead. The people of Zarian Prime rushed into underground shelters. But in the center of it all, two figures ran through the smoke, through the heat, through a city tearing itself apart. Kale and Valera. His chains were gone, but their pieces floated around him, glowing like pieces of a living weapon. The air around his body shimmered with heat. His steps left faint sparks on the ground. Valera ran beside him, breathing hard, her black uniform torn, her mark glowing on her neck like a silent rebellion. They had no weapons, no army, no backup, but they had each other, and now that was enough. An explosion shook the ground behind them. A sky turret fired from the tower top. Red beams sliced through the air, melting stone, blowing apart walkways. Down here, Valera shouted, grabbing Cal's hand and pulling him into a narrow tunnel between buildings. They ducked into shadows, breathing heavily. Cal leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. "You're hurt," Valera said. "I'm fine," Cal whispered. "Just too much power at once." She looked at the glowing shards of the chains, floating near him like they were alive. "What are those things?" she asked. Cal looked at them too. "They're part of me now. Or maybe I've become part of them." He held up his hand. One of the chain fragments flew to him and wrapped gently around his wrist like a bracelet. "They obey me now," he said. Valera swallowed. "Then we might have a chance." Suddenly, shouts from behind. "Soldiers, 5 of them." "He's here," one yelled. "Don't let them escape." Cal stepped forward. His chains flew out like snakes, glowing red and gold. They whipped through the air, slamming into the ground in front of the soldiers. A wall of energy exploded upward, blocking the path. The soldiers stopped, stunned. But the energy wouldn't last long. "We need to keep moving," Cal said. Valera nodded. "There's a rebel docking port near the north end, hidden under the old library." "You're sure?" "I helped design it. I never thought I'd use it myself." They ran again. Every street was chaos. Fires danced along the rooftops. Ships exploded in the air. The Empire had turned its own weapons inward, trying to contain the truth before it could spread. But it was too late. Valera's escape had already been broadcasted. Someone in the palace had leaked the footage. Her touching Cal, the chains breaking, the Empress stepping back in fear. Now, across the planet, whispers rose. "The commander has turned. The chain-bearer is free. The Empress has lost the fire." And in those whispers, hope was waking up. Cal and Valera reached the old library. It looked dead, just a broken dome with shattered statues and faded books turned to ash. But behind the last shelf, under the floor, was a metal hatch. Valera pulled it open. Below, a tunnel, lit by small blue lights, leading deep into the earth. Cal climbed in after her and sealed it shut behind them. For the first time in hours, there was silence, just the sound of their footsteps on cold metal. "Almost there," Valera whispered. Cal nodded. He looked at her. "You didn't have to come with me," he said softly. "You could have stayed, been forgiven. Said I forced you." Valera stopped walking. She turned toward him, eyes glowing faintly. "I was in chains too," she said. "They just didn't glow." Cal smiled. "And now," she stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest. "Now I can breathe." A moment passed between them, quiet, full, real. Then the tunnel shook. A voice echoed from the entrance behind them. "Velir." Her blood froze. She knew that voice. General Theros, her mentor, her second father, loyal to the Empress. He had followed them. And he wasn't alone. Cal raised his hands. The chain shards floated around him, spinning fast. "Go," he told her. "I'll hold them." Valera stepped in front of him. "No." He blinked. "Valera." "No," she said again. "You've been saving me since the day we met. Now it's my turn. Kale looked into her eyes. Strong, brave, unshakable. Then we do it together, he said. They stood side by side as the tunnel filled with enemy soldiers. Thoros stepped forward, his armor cracked from battle, his face full of fury and betrayal. You were our future, Valera, our symbol, and you threw it away for him. Valera raised her voice, strong and clear. No, I threw away a lie. For the truth. Kale held up his hands, and the chains snapped forward like lightning, forming a circle around them. The soldiers fired. Blasts hit the barrier of chain light. Valera pulled a small beacon from her belt, her final secret. She slammed it into the floor. Boom. A hidden door opened ahead. A small ship, buried under the library for years, hummed to life. Kale grabbed her hand. Now. They ran. Bullets flying. Fire rising. The ship door closed just as a final blast hit the tunnel behind them. The ship rose into the air, breaking through the library roof. Kale took the controls. Valera sat beside him, bruised, breathless, but smiling. Behind them, the city burned. But ahead, stars. Where now? She asked. Kale looked at her. Wherever people still dream. And far behind, in the shadows of the Empire, the Empress watched a screen in silence. Her soldiers had failed. Valera had escaped. The chain-bearer was free. And the bond had been forged. She turned to her advisors. Prepare the fleet, she said coldly. This is now a war of souls. The change in her. The stars stretched wide around them. The ship moved slowly through deep space now, far from Zarian Prime, far from the fire, the palace, and the throne room where it all began. Valera stood near the window, her hand resting gently against the glass. She had never seen the stars like this before, not through the eyes of a soldier, not from the seat of a warship, but as someone finally free. The mark on her neck still glowed softly. It no longer felt like a curse. Now it felt like a beginning. Kale walked into the control room. He had rested for the first time in days. The chain fragments still floated near him, now calm, like birds waiting for a command. His face looked tired, but peaceful. You didn't sleep, he said. Valera smiled softly. Didn't want to. Bad dreams. No, just too much to think about. Kale stepped beside her. You've changed, he said. Valera looked at him. So have you. He chuckled. Maybe. But the biggest change wasn't in me. It was in you. She didn't respond right away. Then she asked quietly, Do you remember what you said to me the first day? About how I looked tired, lonely. Kale nodded. I hated you for saying it, she continued. Because it was true. I spent years following orders. Becoming a weapon. Wearing a face that wasn't mine. And somehow you saw through it. In seconds. He looked at her gently. You saw me too. Even when I was in chains. You spoke to me like I mattered. Valera's eyes misted. You did matter. More than I ever guessed. She turned away, wiping her cheek. I keep thinking, what if I had ignored you? What if I had left you to rot in that cell? Kale's voice was soft but firm. Then the galaxy would have missed its last chance. Valera looked at him, startled. What do you mean? Kale took a breath and stepped back. He raised his hand, and the floating chains gathered around him, forming a circle in the air. A map appeared. But it wasn't a map of space. It was a map of energy. Souls. Echoes of life. Valera stared at it, stunned. What is this? It's what I was sent to find, Kale said. The old flame. The last light. Hidden across worlds, inside people. Not soldiers. Not kings. Just souls who still feel. He pointed to glowing dots scattered across the map. Some are on human colonies, some in Zarian cities, others, even deeper. Valera looked confused. But what does that mean? Kale turned to her. It means the war we thought we were fighting is not the real war. She frowned. Then what is? The war for truth, he said. The war for hearts, for minds, for the soul of every species. Valera stared at the map. She felt something rise inside her, like fire, like music, like purpose. So what now? She whispered. Kale reached out and gently took her hand. We find them. We bring them together. Humans, Zarians, anyone ready to feel again, to change, to choose something better. Valera nodded, but then her eyes darkened. And what about the Empress? Kale's voice turned serious. She won't stop. She will send hunters, armies, lies, but she's already lost. Valera raised an eyebrow. How? Because we're not hiding anymore, Kale said. We're beacons. The mark on your skin, the chains, the bond. It will call others. Some will follow. Some will fight. But the truth always echoes. Valera smiled. Stronger now. Fiercer. I was trained to kill for the Empire. Now I'll fight to heal what it broke. Kale smiled back. That's why the chains chose you. Hours later, they landed on a small planet, hidden in the edge of a silent galaxy. No cities, no guards, just green skies, crystal lakes, and deep forests. The ship settled gently on the ground. Valera stepped out first, breathing in the clean air. This place feels alive, she whispered. Kale followed her. It is. It's one of the old worlds, sacred ground. No war ever reached here. They walked together through the trees. And then they saw them. Others. People. Different races. Zarian. Human. Even two species Valera had only seen in reports. They stood in silence, watching Kale and Valera approach. One by one, they bowed their heads. Valera's breath caught. Who are they? She whispered. Kale smiled. The ones who heard the call. The ones who dream. Valera looked around. Dozens. No, hundreds. Some wore armor. Some wore robes. Some were barefoot. But all had one thing in common. Marks on their skin, glowing like hers. The bond had spread. Hope had found its messengers. That night, Valera stood by the lake, looking at the stars. Kale walked up behind her. She didn't turn. She simply asked, Do you think we'll win? Kale stood beside her and looked up at the stars too. We already are, he said. Valera nodded, then whispered, Thank you for breaking my chains. Kale reached out and touched her hand. You were never truly chained. You just needed someone to remind you. They stood there for a long time, not as prisoner and commander, not as human and Zarian, but as something new. And far across the galaxy, deep in the dark chambers of the Empire, the Empress stared at her reflection. The stars were shifting. The fire was spreading. She clenched her fists and whispered, Let them gather. Let them hope. I will burn it all before I kneel. But even she knew. The flame had already escaped the throne, and it was never coming back.